Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Disciple Up Lowdown for the week of January 13th, 2019. And my name is Louie. I'm your host for the show. Glad you're with us. We're doing things a little bit different this time. If you watched the very first episode of Disciple Up Lowdown, you noticed it was all scripted. Well, today it's not going to be scripted. We're going to try to wing it, and we're also going to try to rearrange my earplugs so they don't bother me so much, to add a feature which will tie into what we're going to be talking about. And so we're going to do our very first Disciple Up, What's Up? And What's Up is something that happened to me this week as I was pulling up at the stoplight to turn left to drive down the road that goes to the bottom of the hill that leads up to my house, and I pulled in behind a big black pickup truck. Beautiful, big black, kind of flat, matte kind of color, jacked up a little bit, looked really cool. And on the back of it was a bumper sticker, faded out, but you could still read it. And it said, "Nature is my religion." Ooh, doesn't that sound good? Nature is my religion. That's the kind of thing we hear a lot of nowadays. These little pithy sayings, whether they're on bumper stickers or internet memes or whatever it is, that seem to sound so profound and so spiritual until you stop to think about them. And then, well, maybe they're not quite as profound as you think. So let's think about that statement. Nature is my religion. Okay. And you put that on the back of your big pickup truck, which guzzles gas, and it emits fumes which are harmful to nature. So you're harming your religion driving this truck that has the sign on it that says, "Nature is my religion." Now, I don't know who this person is. I don't know them, but I suspect that they live in a house. They live in a house that's heated and certainly around here in the summers air-conditioned. They live in a house that has running water that uses electricity, which is generated somewhere doing something. And I imagine that they probably live in a house where they try to keep the bugs out, and they try to keep the mice out, and they try to keep all those beautiful, wonderful messengers of their religion, nature, out, so that they can live inside in the wonderful warmth and coolness and comfort that technology brings that rescues us from nature. You see, nature's a great place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there. People live there for thousands of years, and we have spent thousands of years developing technology to put some distance between us and nature, because while nature's a great place to visit and it's beautiful to look at and it's awe-inspiring and it's amazing, to live out in nature, well, it really sucks because it's cold in the winter and it's hot in the summer and it's wet when it rains, and there's bugs and there's animals and there's dirt and there's all kinds of things, and there's certainly no naturally occurring electricity, so no cell phones, no internet, no nothing. And yet somehow, even though I live with nature kept at bay, and I experience only as much of nature as I want, when I want, and how I want, yet still somehow nature is my religion. Well, guess what? It's not. That's a lot of baloney. That's a nice feeling that people get, but you don't really live that way. So when you say things like that, what are you? Well, guess what? You're a hypocrite. That's what that is. To say nature is my religion and then to turn around and try to live pretty far from it, safe from it. Because nature, like I said, is pesky and dirty and dangerous. I've had a invasion recently in my house of mice and even killed a rat, and there are other rats around here. And I am being proactive. I've got called up some pest control people, and I put in some things myself, and we're going to try to drive the little buggers out and away. I have no, by the way, you should know this. I have no argument. I have no conflict with rats and mice in nature, as long as they stay away from me. Because you see, nature is not my religion. And so if they come into my house, they either leave or they die. That's it. That's the bottom line. Because I don't want to live in nature. You can go camping for a day or a week or a month or whatever, but eventually you're going to want to come back to the air conditioning. Reminds me of through hikers that I follow, and they get out there for 4 or 5 days, maybe 6 at probably a max, and they're out there, they're hiking, they're carrying everything on their back, their tent and their food, whatever, and they've got their cell phones, which they do videos on, which is what I watch on YouTube, and some of them actually have cameras, and they have recorders, and they have all this stuff, and several of them have commented when they've passed by power stations, out on the edges of town or whatever, and that's so terrible, that's so ugly, ooh. And yet the first thing they do when they get to town is they use electricity to recharge their phones, and they get on the internet, which of course requires technology, and they jump into a nice hot shower, which takes technology, electricity, natural gas, etc. to work. All of these things they use, and then they go out there and they make all of these statements. And the reason we do that is because it's an emotion. It's not real. We're not thinking critically about it. But people want to sound like they're woke environmentalists. Well, do us all a favor and do yourself a favor. Go back to sleep. Because this stuff that we're saying is just garbage. It doesn't hold up to critical thinking. In fact, people know that. And that's why you can't even use the word critical thinking anymore, because it has the word critical in it. And that's not nice. Oh, we mustn't be critical. Oh, that is so bad, isn't it? No, it's not. It's actually good. We have to learn to be skeptical and think critically about things and think things through. And that's the Disciple Up What's Up for this week. Now, how does that tie into what I'm doing on Disciple Up, the podcast, where we're looking at the gifts of the Holy Spirit? Well, quite simply, if you heard last week's episode, you already know, because we talked about how you just can't take at face value everything you hear about the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Even something as simple as the number of gifts, people get it wrong, as I showed you. And the same is true this week. This week, we're going to take a look at the definition of the spiritual gifts and how they work in our lives. And there's a lot of things that are said and taught that aren't really scriptural. But you're not going to know that unless you're a critical thinker, unless you're thinking things through, comparing them to scriptures, and logically running them through your head. Also this week on Disciple Up, we're going to have our very first Disciple Up follow-up. Because what we're going to do here, as we like to do on Disciple Up, is we share stories, things that happen in the Christian world, and then we want to follow them up as more news becomes available. Well, if you remember back in episode 82, I talked to you about this worldwide ministry that comes out of this church who were suing people, fellow Christians, people who had left their church but had started a blog and were criticizing the church. Now, this is a worldwide ministry with a radio show and all this stuff, and they're upset about one little blog. And so the pastor, main teacher, wrote an article, quote, justifying, unquote, their suit. And it was, as I pointed out to you in that episode, which you might want to go back and listen to, episode 82 of Disciple Up, available at discipleup.org, as well as on Apple Podcasts and all the rest. It was a lot of baloney. Well, they took them to court. And guess what happened? I'm not going to tell you, but here's a little hint. Take a deep breath. Can you smell the irony? I can, and so will you, on this edition of Disciple Up that comes up this Wednesday, the 16th of January, 2019. So I hope that you'll come join us for that. It's going to be educational. It's going to be revelational in some senses, and it in the more limited sense of that word. And hopefully you'll have some fun. All that's coming your way. So until then, God bless you. Take care, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Disciple Up Lowdown. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you'd like to hear. And you can do all that, of course, by simply emailing me, Louie, Louie, at discipleup.org. I encourage you to come by the site and check things out. You can listen to the podcast there. There are links there where you can go and subscribe on your favorite podcast site, whether it's Stitcher or iHeartRadio or whatever it is. And there's also a lot of other stuff, by the way, available at discipleup.org, including a lot of video teaching, my series on the revival reminders, which I just finished a couple of weeks ago. That's all available there as well. And then Wednesday mornings, the podcast is released. So be part of all that, guys. And until next time, this is Louis saying thanks for watching. Take care. God bless you. And I will see you later.